Welcome to episode 5 of Desi Girl Sparkle. Today we are going to talk about interracial relationships. So I have with me Vinny Patel and Samir Patel. Thanks so much for being here, guys. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy days to sit and talk about this. As I'm sure you both have probably felt, interracial relationships have been something that people in our community frown upon a lot. They're very judgmental about it, and there's just a lot of chaos that happens in society around interracial couples in our community. So I'm just going to go ahead and start off and kind of start with the first question, which is tell me a little bit about your story of meeting your partner and kind of your journey together. And whoever wants to start can start. It's always a dance, like who's going to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. So yeah, I've been with my girlfriend for a crazy long time at this point, like over 10 years. Her name's Mary, which if that's not clear enough, she is white. We met at this co-working networking event in Charlotte. We were both in marketing jobs at the time, like young, kind of out of college, fresh in our careers. So we were doing all these local events and stuff like that. And it was me, her, and like a bunch of old white dudes. So naturally, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go talk to her.
Yeah.
We chatted for a little bit, but like it was like a networking event, so I didn't want to like be unprofessional or anything like that. So nothing came of it. But then we saw each other on a dating app like a few weeks later. Started talking there, went on a couple dates, and yeah, the rest is history.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I didn't know that you guys like met in person first and then saw each other on a dating app. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. She always makes fun of me because I gave her my business card. But I was like, "I'm sorry, you were working, and I
Yeah.
didn't wanna, come off as presumptuous."
All right. And be like, what's your number, girl? Like, what about you, Samir?
Yeah, we'd met on a dating app actually and kind of hit it off. Well, I actually thought we weren't gonna she didn't wanna see me again after the first date. And then we ended up meeting up a few more times and yeah, and we've been together now like 4 or 5 years.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. Did I? I don't think I knew you guys met on a dating app either.
Yeah, we did.
So at what point did cultural differences become noticeable in your relationships?
I mean, she's German, so it was like pretty obvious right away. But there haven't really been a lot of, or I guess cultural differences haven't really played a large part in our relationship.
I would say, probably more so when we started dating seriously is when I wouldn't say it was like these were points of friction or anything, but you just start to notice just, how we interact with the world is just different. You know, how we interact with, just culturally because, Indians and, like, most immigrant families are, so community oriented, the way we engage with friends and like, hey, we're going to a party, we need to make sure we bring something and like this and that. The pleasantries that we like really value
Hmm.
was a big thing. And then I think the biggest thing was like in terms of meeting the families. Pretty much once it became like a thing, I said immediately, I was like, hey, listen, you're not going to meet my family. And so that I think was probably the hardest on her side, something that was like really difficult for her to deal with.
Yeah. I'm guessing now your families have obviously met. So
Yeah.
how did they react when they first learned about your relationships?
My family was pretty excited and thrilled. She fit pretty seamlessly into our family actually, so it's been really nice. That's why I don't think like while it's obvious there's cultural differences, they haven't really been a point of friction or anything. It's really been enjoyable to learn about her culture and where she comes from. I think Germans are like white Indians. They're like, fiscally responsible, they're hardworking, they're very family and community oriented. So yeah, it's been a pretty seamless fit.
That's beautiful.
We had different experiences. Mine was difficult because there wasn't ever this like announcement like, hey, I'm seeing this person. And everybody
Mm,
was like, like everybody knew, you just didn't talk about it.
mm.
And that was kind of this unspoken understanding of like, people caught on. I would tell like my siblings knew and my cousins after a while knew, and I think had even met her, maybe a year or two in. But yeah, it was a while before like it stopped being like an open secret.
Mm. Was there something in particular that triggered the conversation or kind of the stopping point of it, like being a secret?
I think the big trigger was like I wanted my grandparents to know. And like everything that was kind of the linchpin of like once they know, the floodgates are open.
Yeah,
Like because they're the, final, I don't want to say deciders, but like they're the kind of gates to the rest of the community. If
right.
they give their approval, no one else has a say at that point. And that took a really long time. In fact, I don't think I got to introduce her to them until after we moved to San Francisco. And that was like
Wow.
6 years ago. So that was the thing that really pushed it over the edge of like me pushing to be like, hey, I need them to know. Like I can't hide this from them anymore.
Yeah,
And again, like they knew. Like
yeah,
they knew something was up and that the family was not telling me.
right. Was there ever a moment where you felt like there were challenges or you thought like this is going to be a lot harder than I expected?
Not really. Um, it's
Samir's
been,
like, this is smooth sailing for me.
Yeah, I know it's gonna be a one-sided.
I mean, sure, there are obvious cultural differences just in some of the day-to-day things that can lead to misunderstandings, but I think communication is a big part of a successful relationship. So, being able to be open and honest and trust that the other person values that part or those things really helps avoid any large disagreements or difficulties.
Yeah, I think the things that were difficult was just the fact that it was like uncharted territory. I was the oldest. There wasn't really a ton of people close to me. The people close to me were either not in a relationship, not in an interracial relationship, or were hiding it straight up. And there was like family members that you'd hear about of like, oh, so and so is dating a person of a different race or culture or whatever. But like nobody I was like super close to, or you can't reach out because then it's like, oh, you're gonna let people know, and the Desi News Network moves fast, and next thing you know, everybody knows what's up.
Yeah,
And so what was difficult was just like because it's so taboo, I didn't know what needed to be addressed. So it was like I was flying blind.
right. Yeah, there's at least on our side of the family, there's not really an example or someone that you could look to be like, okay, this is what they did and this is what I can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever dealt with any racism or microaggressions as a couple, either from our community or even outside of our community?
I haven't actually. Well, maybe the only microaggression is that my family's more excited to see her than they are to see me. But otherwise, not really. There's been lots of examples in our family of people marrying outside the Indian community. So I feel like a lot of that taboo or that's already kind of been dealt with in the past. So it's not like a novel thing when it happens now in our
Yeah.
family.
I would say outside of the family for sure, like growing up in the South, nothing egregious. You just get a look,
Hmm.
or there's an assumption you walk in, and when they'll like look at you like if you're ordering, like say you go to like a coffee shop or something, and it's like they'll take my order and I go, man, what would you like? And it's like, oh, we're together, and they're like,
Oh, yeah.
oh. Like it's just an assumption that that we're not together. Even like we just traveled to Yellowstone, and you're in Jackson Hole, which, middle of nowhere Wyoming town, and you just catch people's eyes here, and
Yeah.
they're just kind of staring. And who's to say if it's like a curiosity versus a judgment versus
Right.
whatever. In the family, little comments is like more joking, which I'm fine with. And I think again there would be like a curiosity of like people asking about her who I don't have a relationship with.
Right.
I'm like, why do you care? Like,
Yeah.
and it's like all of a sudden you're super interested in my life. I would say the biggest thing I would get, and this was less so. I've had a white girlfriend before, and like the biggest thing I got were from like other Indians in the community. like Indians in college where you get that whole like, oh, you're not a real Indian type shit. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Can we curse on here? My
Yeah, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
bad. I've gotten shit like that like my growing up like a lot, especially through college.
Yeah, wow. I think you already said this a little bit, but, like, you go to a coffee shop, like you said, and, people don't realize that you guys are together. How does that feel? Like, do you feel now 10 years into the relationship, like, does it kinda sting a little bit, or are you just kinda like, "I'm just gonna laugh this off," or is it a mix of both?
I mean, it's just part of the territory, like that's part of it's just part of being brown. Like I got stuff before. This is just another life of that. Now I live in San Francisco. And so like there's much, more unique couples than us
Yeah.
out there. And thruples and quadruples. Like,
Yeah.
like it's we're white bread compared to, the rest of the city. So and I love that because nobody sees people see you without all the attributes,
Right,
which is really cool. And then I get a reminder when I come back to the
right.
South or when I go to a small town or like leave the big cities.
Yeah.
And again, nothing ever egregious has happened. I think one thing was like having to kind of educate Mary. She didn't see it. 'Cause why would she?
Mm,
She never dealt with that. She didn't grow up dealing with that. And so like kind of she's now become aware of it and she'll catch looks and things like that or odd comments from people. But at the time she never noticed it because she didn't grow up with it.
right. That's interesting. So it's almost like it was more targeted or geared towards you versus her.
I wouldn't say it was geared towards one of us. It was just I've dealt with racism since I was a kid. And so if you've never dealt with it, you don't know what it looks like. So you just think, oh, a person's staring a little weirdly, or that was an odd comment. You don't realize like there's more behind that, but you
Right.
don't have the history or experience with it.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's misconceptions about interracial couples? And if so, what's the biggest one? Or the biggest one that you've felt or experienced?
I think one thing is like this assumption that you're stepping outside of the culture to be be rebellious or
Mm,
like, you're doing it to make a point or something like that. And like it is not lost on me that being like were I to shack up with an Indian girl, everything would just be a lot smoother. And there are these things of like the culture, right? Like my culture is important to me. And, grabbing onto those things would be easier or would likely be easier with somebody inside my own culture. So it was never like I went out of my way to do that. It just happened. I grew
yeah.
up in the US, like surrounded by people of all walks of life, like, and to be frank, a lot of 80-year-olds were not paying attention to me.
Yeah.
I think that is probably the biggest thing of like, well, why did you have to do that? And it's like it's not really a choice. Like you fall for who you fall for, you connect with who
Right.
you connect with. It is what it is. Like it's not you going out of your way to do something like that.
Right.
Yeah, those are basically my experiences. Like, it's exactly what I was gonna say. Is I think the biggest misconception is that race is a defining factor in the relationship. I don't think race actually has very much to do with it at all. To Vinny's point, it's more about who you match up with, and every race has matches that are good for you and matches that are bad for you. So, yeah, I think race has very little to do with it in the end.
Yeah.
I think the flip side of that is also like this notion of like, oh well now you're gonna lose your culture. And
Mm,
like, no, that's not at all true. Like, Mary has embraced our culture a great deal and like loves to learn about it and, will engage in like various rituals with me at the house and like I have my little Ganesh and like my little mandir set up in the corner of our apartment. Like that's never been an issue. And like, the thing I always point to is like I can't speak Gujarati fluently and I grew up in an Indian household. So like it has nothing to do with whether or not you're with an Indian person. It has to do with your intention of if you care about that culture and you want to connect with it, then you'll make the time.
right. Samir, what about Mel? I know fun fact, Samir and Mel and myself and Rushil, every Tuesday night, we do a gaming night and we go hard on some Mario Kart and Mario Party and
Hell
things get
yeah, hell
very
yeah.
heated.
Nice.
But
What's
I've heard
everybody's character?
I'm Toadette, obviously.
Bet, bet.
I'm Rosalina.
Nice. I'm a DK guy all day.
Yeah. I think Rochelle likes to alternate between Bowser and Yoshi, and
Just
then Mel is
complete
always the
opposite.
mole. But so I've heard on I think one of the calls we were on recently, Samir, you had mentioned that like you guys went and saw your parents in San Francisco in the Bay
Mhm.
Area, and you guys came back with a bunch of food. So what was that like for Mel in terms of getting used to like Indian food and like specifically Gujarati food like shak and khichdi and all that?
She loves it. She's been to India many years ago. Her and a friend backpacked through India, and some of the stuff they did, even like the Indians in my family were shocked. They're like, we wouldn't even do that, you know? So, yeah, she's well traveled, and I think she really enjoys learning about other cultures and embracing other cultures and the food of those cultures. And so, yeah, it's never been a problem, really. The only problem is trying to get through all the food, to be honest, because we get so much.
Dude, tell
But
me about it.
yeah, no, it's never really been an issue. And to Vinny's point, you know, it's helpful when you have a partner who embraces all of those things because I think it makes race even less of a factor in the relationship. We have a little Mun there too, and like I said, Mel's been to India, so yeah, we go up there. We're gonna go for Diwali in next month, and yeah, it's not really been a problem.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think, like, in your case, Samir, Mel kind of came with some of this knowledge maybe before she even met you. Like, she traveled to India before she met you. And then, Vinny, in your case, it seems like Mary kind of learned these things through your guys' relationship. But the common factor with both of those is like the level of effort. Like you said, Vinny, like when you care for somebody, you're gonna put in the effort and you want to learn those things and you want to kind of engage in the culture. And I think it's definitely important for our community to hear that, and to understand that, like, one, you're not losing your culture in this, and two, the other person is also making the effort to learn
Mhm.
and be part of it because it's part of your life. So, my last question is what advice would you give to someone who's struggling to balance their culture and their love? I know that there's still many people in today's day and age who, like, either come from very conservative families or even if their immediate family is not conservative, their extended family is conservative, and so they feel like they need to kind of hide their relationship or, like, put their story only to certain people on Instagram or, things like that. So, what advice would you give to someone, who's struggling with that?
I think the biggest thing is like you gotta do you, man. It's gonna be hard. I think don't let anybody tell you. Obviously, every situation is different, and like I think me and Samir seem to be on like maybe more opposite ends of the spectrum, but like it will be difficult, most likely. But you'll get through the other side. I think that's the biggest thing is like commit, like especially if you're older, like you're an adult, like if you care about this person, stand up for yourself, like put your foot down, this is what it is, and understand that like I think the biggest thing that helped me kind of bring my family along is like kind of showing that the fear presents itself from the family, like the judgment and the fear presents itself as like you're stepping out of the culture or you're degrading your culture or
Mhm,
diluting it. And so when you pose the question like what do you define the culture as, the argument starts to fall apart real quick.
mm,
Because is it the language? I can't speak the language. Is it, you know, being able to cook the food? I can't cook the food. A lot of modern day new girls can't cook the food,
yeah,
right? Like so what is it? Is it because if it's just skin color, then that's a different conversation.
Yeah, my advice would be to find someone who has a shared value system. I think that's probably the most important thing in a relationship, far more important than race or language or culture. Someone who, you know, can appreciate your sense of humor and has a shared vision or a financial goal and lives a similar lifestyle. I think all those things make it much easier in the day to day. And then in terms of dealing with family, I would say that it's much easier to live with the consequences of your own decisions than the consequences of someone else's decision. So you
yeah,
might as well just do what feels right to you and live with those consequences.
yeah,
That's
absolutely.
that's really really well put. Like,
Yeah.
ultimately, if someone cares about you and your happiness and your well-being, they'll get over it. And like once they get over it, if you're worried about friggin' Kaki out in Nashville, forget her. You're gonna see her maybe once every 3 years.
Mhm.
I really don't give a shit what she thinks.
Yeah.
Like, and what most of this comes back to is like, what are other people gonna think? Fuck what other people think. Like, our family is good. We're solid. Outside of that, people could talk.
That was beautiful, guys. This was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed this because going into this, I had talked to a couple of people and it came down to the two of you. And so I was like, well, they both live in California. They're both dating someone who's white. This is going to be great, like it's going to be similar stories and it's far from that. It's two
Yeah.
totally different sides, which is kind of cool like to hear both the different sides of it and, coming from a family, Vinny, where we don't have examples of many interracial relationships. And then Samir on the opposite end, like you said, you've had many other family members who have stepped outside of the culture and either dated or married someone that's not Indian or not South Asian. Like I think it's really cool to have both of the perspectives and it's helpful to see like the differences and where the commonality is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing your stories with us. And a special shout out to Mary and Mel for being very honorably mentioned in this episode. We will be coming out with a second part to this where I talk to the non Indian, non South Asian folks that have dated or married into the South Asian world and kind of get their experience and perspective as well. So that is coming out soon. And yeah, awesome. Thanks, guys.
Cool. Thank you,
Thank you.
Ashley.